Hey everybody, welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast from Backlot Banter where we review every single Palme d'Or winner, and today we are going back to the year 1966 with the film The Birds, the Bees, and the Italians, directed by Pietro Germi. This is an anthology film, 3 parts, and well, it's a bit of a comedy, something different than what we normally look at here on the Quest for the Bestest. As you may notice, I'm here in a new environment. I did indeed move to the big city, New York City, as it would be named.
And the Windy City.
Nope, not that one. So you hear some stuff in the background. That's just that's just the city. Don't mind it.
That's just the sounds of life, baby.
That's exactly right, Tanner.
Hey, I'm walking here, you know?
Yeah,
a New York slice here.
Yeah, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us, you know what I'm saying?
Some like stuff like that, yeah.
Exactly. I'm excited to talk about Birds, Bees, and Italians. Before we do that, though, I would like to remind y'all of what we talked about last time. Does anybody remember what movie we talked about last time? Because it's been a moment. I don't remember.
I'm gonna be honest, I have no clue.
It was Winter's Sleep.
Indeed it was. And
it feels like such a long time ago.
This is Abram.
That was a
it's
great
actually
episode.
that was a great episode. It was a while ago. Winter's Sleep turned out to be a great movie. We talked about it on and on and on and on, and it got a 9.3. So spot number 2 on the list, only below Parasite, the only film that's above Winter's Sleep. So if you are interested,
by the way,
yes.
Sorry to interject, but we do have a lingering issue here.
We do have, there's an outstanding vote going on. Hang on, let me check my watch. I don't think we got any votes on last few weeks.
No, nobody voted at all across any channel.
Yeah, our debacle of what to do with Farewell My Concubine kinda stays. We're gonna have to discuss what we actually do about that in a little while, but.
We could do a revote, like it's the Democratic primary.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we do a little ranked choice topical for Timo in New York currently.
That's right. Okay. We'll think about it. We will make it happen and find a way to score Farewell My Concubine versus Taxi Driver versus The Pianist, and versus The Conversation, and versus Anatomy of a Fall. All films that got a 9.1.
I think it was just Pianist and Farewell My Concubine.
Yes,
I think that was the only thing.
Yeah, we did narrow it down for the sake of our audience, but well, some homework, I guess, as we ramble on here through these. Yes, you had something?
Ranked choice voting of all of those movies, and make sure you continue to leave Cuomo unranked when you submit.
That's right. Exactly. Leave him off the 5.
Today, let's dive in. Abram, are there any comments worth noting, or do we just want to get talk about this film?
Yeah, let's just hop into it. How about it, huh?
Okay, sure.
Let's give the audience something to discuss. The Birds and the Bees and the Italians. Tanner, would you tell us what happens in this 3-part anthology movie?
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, Timo, this is an anthology film. This all takes place in the Italian town of Treviso. From the Letterboxd description, I don't know if that's ever fully discussed in the film. But anyway, this is a 3-story film, one that encompasses basically a group of friends. Some folks that are sort of high society in Italy, but they go around to nightclubs and restaurants. I know. I'm surprised as the rest of us here. So there's a lot of different character names that I'm not going to be able to tell you right now. What y'all need to know is that there are 3 stories in this film. The first one is about a guy, all right? And this guy, he's friends with a doctor. And he tells this doctor, hey, guess what? My dick don't work no more. And his doctor's like, what an idiot this guy is. His dick don't work no more.
Well,
yeah.
What his doctor says is,
yeah, he bursts out laughing uproariously, but little does that doctor know that this guy, supposedly his dick doesn't work, but in fact it does, and he's only telling this lie to sleep with the doctor's wife. And that he does. And then the second story, it's about a guy who has a really naggy wife, and he also has a bit of a side piece that he'd like to shack up with instead. That's sort of a bit frowned upon in 1960s Italy, post-war Italy. So what he does is he eventually works up a little bit of strength to go along and divorce his wife and get married to this new woman. But then his friends basically shame him out of it, and the lady runs off and everything like that, and then he's depressed and still in his original marriage. And then in the third story,
Well, and he almost tries to kill himself because he does not want to go back to the original marriage.
That's good. That's a good point.
But the Valiant,
I'm surprised that you say, what's the third story?
Oh, yes, I remember it now. The third story is perhaps the most, shocking and disgusting of them all, which is that there's a group of men in the town characters we've come accustomed to over the last hour and a half or so of film time. And hey, this young lady comes to town. And they're all like, hey, we should like all sleep with her in the same day. And so they do. But whoa, record scratch. It turns out she's 15 years old. What? And so they have to get out of some legal trouble with all that. So, this film hasn't necessarily aged the best. But Timo, if I can take the reins here a little bit and give my opening thoughts, if you'll allow me to.
Roll right into it. What did you actually think of watching this movie?
Man, you're like the middle guy's wife. You don't shut up.
So, yeah, of course, there's some less than savory things covered in this film. But ultimately, and this is a discussion that we had briefly in the old BLB group chat before we started recording, that it is ultimately a satire. I think it is clearly satirizing some of the things, the behaviors, especially of men, but also like the marital expectations, the relationships between men and women in 20th century Italy, which was, had some very strange and dissonant morals about relationships and like sexual promiscuity, but also like having strong marriages and things like that, and the presence of the church and everything. I think it has some things to say about that. Ultimately, this is where I kind of come down on it. If you remember our episode on MASH from a couple months back, I kind of feel the same about that. That yes, the satirical elements are here, and I am able to read them quite easily, but also I feel like there's some cruelty to this film, maybe some reads that it doesn't necessarily have on the, correctly, that don't make the satire work as well as it should.
Abram, what did you think? Did you think that the film had satire or no, or something else?
I don't know. I just think it's really boring. I don't really have particularly deep thoughts on this one. I had posted in our group chat, like, do we think that this is satire or am I being too hopeful? And I think that obviously it's satirical, and I think that there's a little bit of satire with a newspaper in the third story that is very clear and I think good satire that has a clear target and is humorously presented.
As we know, satire requires clarity of purpose and subject, lest it be mistaken for the thing it wishes to criticize. If I paraphrase a meme,
yes.
Did you just come up with that?
I've read it on this guy. I've read it on that guy's tank top every day for the past 5 years of my life. you know the one where he's pointing his finger up and continue, Abram.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that I don't really think it reads as satire most of the time. I think it reads as just like a comedy from the post-war Italy about
like a sex comedy.
Yeah, it's just a sex comedy about my bitch wife, and it's it's just kind of boring.
Please don't talk about your wife that way.
Abram gets bonus points for first.
I find that hard to believe that it's about your wife.
Well, but I don't know. I think that the movie. Careful now, don't clip me. I think that the movie's at its best with the underage sequence.
Sure, yeah. I think it's where the satire is the clearest.
It's the satire is the clearest. I think there's the funniest crash zooms in that portion. And and it's also not monotonously long. Like the second story is like an hour of the movie.
Yeah.
And there's a good earplugs joke, but here's the other problem, folks. All the jokes are just like garden variety misogyny. So it's it's not really satire. It's just man, women, they love talking, so I'm going to put my earplugs in and I can't hear them anymore. So I don't know. I think it's just dated and boring, frankly.
Sure.
Tucker, your thoughts?
Very little else to add. I think this is going to be a shorter Quest episode, not only because I can pretty much guarantee we're all on the same page with this one, but because I just think this movie doesn't have a lot of substance. I mean, the three of these stories, not only I think we can probably agree they're not very funny, even though that's the intent. What it leaves us with is a group of characters who aren't well fleshed out and frankly not well distinguished either, because they all fill the exact same role, which is upper class, mostly business-minded guys who are constantly talking about business, that only a few of them have mildly distinct personality traits. And so when it's a comedy that's not funny about a topic that we're probably all pretty uncomfortable with largely, and don't find like entertaining or like uproariously funny as it feels like the movie's gearing itself towards, we're left with this group of characters who are just not interesting to follow, and these plot lines that are incredibly by the numbers. You talk about that middle section of the film, Abram, that is an hour long, and it's also the most boring straight down the number story of like, oh, well, this guy doesn't like his wife, and so he finds a mistress, and then he sleeps with the mistress.
And then there's
we just
kind of
deal with that for an hour.
And then
I'm
there's
like,
some consequences.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I thought this was a pretty much entertaining movie. I mean, I don't think comedically the performances are fine enough, but almost none of them really stand out to me. Not really many sequences that stick in my mind, even though I watched this movie a couple hours ago. I have essentially nothing positive to say about this movie, and in general, nothing to say about this movie.
Sure.
We're in for a meaty one, folks. I would say that my opinions lie somewhere in between. That I was like entertained-ish. I was not bored, but I was entertained-ish by this film. Seeing what these characters would get up to, trying to learn who these characters are. I did find myself enjoying the second story a bit because I found this kind of society that like is so the combination of our main guy who hates his wife so much, and if you're gonna only side with him, he's justified. If you just ignore the fact that like his wife is like a person and like deserves to be like listened to and heard and like have her problems, figured out as like a family unit.
Yeah,
if we ignore
yada,
that
yada,
fact,
all of that.
if we ignore that fact, then he seems justified. And the gag of him putting the earplugs in, I like it. It's funny. But yeah, I don't know. You're right that the final sequence is the most energetic. It's the most like we're going to stick it to the journalist. Like, oh, the journalists need this certain type of story. Then they're going to make it a certain type of story as opposed to like just reporting on the truth. And then you have them all get away with it at the end too. Like there's the kind of the way that the peasant father decides to like get his justice is somewhat interesting there at the end. But yeah, like Tucker says, it's just kind of not full of a lot. There's not a lot going on, I think, and it will be kind of a forgettable movie in the future. I remember it for the title. The title's a good and unique title, and I'll probably think of that every once in a while. But like, what actually happens, other than the fact that second guy, small beard or whatever they called the Jokers called him, which let me note this. Living in that town seems like perpetual high school. That seems like high school that just goes on until you're 65, 80 years old and you croak and die.
Yeah.
And that does not seem like it kind of makes sense why you'd want to like leave. I think what did they made some reference to Sicily in the film, right? Didn't they? Is this
I don't know.
Trevino somewhere, Treviso or whatever it is, somewhere near Sicily? Who knows? If I lived there, I'd get out. I'd be like, I got to leave this town. This place sucks.
See, no, I think that is kind of like the core of what the satire ultimately ends up being, and a lot of our discussion around this film is really going to focus on this third story. I think because
because I couldn't even tell the satire of the first section. Right, the first section didn't even. It just was like plot, and we're figuring this adultery thing, and this really outsized doctor character who I was enjoying watching, and kind of like glazing my eyes were rolling backwards as everything else was happening in the scene.
but I think it becomes clear with the end of the second story going into the third. Basically everything that starts from like when the men of the town who we've seen in the first act or whatever basically conspire along with the some wives and things like that, and also some business and town
Lawyers.
leadership and things like that
Yeah.
to like make sure that little beard or whatever. I did write names down just so I could remember them.
And because one of Osvaldo, and
is
then
the
there's
guy.
that one wife that is very gung ho in both of the second and the third stories, right? About kind of she's like the group leader of going after first Osvaldo and then yes.
Ippolita or whatever.
yeah, and she right is then the wife of the impotent guy at the beginning.
Yeah,
Yes.
the first guy.
I don't know what that says, but she's kind of a muckraker shit stirrer type
Well-
character.
Well, there's a different character that they call the ball breaker in this movie, of course.
It's true.
I think if we're looking at it broadly, but the part of the reason that the movie that I think is just totally impenetrable from a modern perspective is I think that I was making light of the fact that a lot of the jokes circle the drain of a lot of like sitcom style misogyny. Oh, the wife talks too much. Oh, I hate my wife. Whatever. But I think what makes the film particularly hard to return to with a modern viewpoint is just the like the normalized violence towards women, the normalized othering of women, and the way that they don't even often function as plot so much as they function as the butt of jokes that don't come off as anything other than just misogynistic in sort of a violent manner. I'm thinking about the number of times that we're just slap a woman around, or that scene I think in the third film when one of the wives is her husband. She's re-encountering her husband after finding out that he'd slept with this underage girl, and it's almost like this Three Doors act as she keeps.
Yeah, she keeps trying to like tear her clothes off and like be naked out on the balcony for some reason.
Yeah, and then
unclear.
She did this earlier in the movie too, in the first section, and it was unclear why she did it then. And...
Yeah.
There's like this just implicit worldview of the film, which is, I mean, again, we're looking at this film 50 years later. This is implicit 60 years actually worldview wherein there's a particular role that the woman inhabits, and there is a band of acceptable behavior for the husband that is, I would say, about 10 times wider a band of acceptability than we would accept. And I do think, particularly in a show like this, when we're putting all these movies in context, I can't really look at it, none of us can, and say, well, it was the 60s, so if you slapped your wife around a little bit, it's just all for the love of the birds, the bees, and the Italians.
Yeah.
I think it just undermines any opportunity to have any sort of like progressive for the time or transgressive gender politics or dynamics. It just feels
especially
ugly.
when that is what the movie is about. A movie. Yeah. I mean, first of all, I was gonna say that the English title, "The Birds, the Bees, and the Italians," is way better than the original Italian title, which is "Ladies and Gentlemen." Because the movie is entirely about the relationships between men and women, the patriarchy and everything like that. But it really has no observations about this. And is it fair for us to ask that an Italian movie from 1966 have observations about like the patriarchy and men and women and sexism and things? And my answer would have to be maybe kinda. Like this is kind of like the forefront of like of second wave feminism and everything like that. The film is also like sort of incisive about like morality police, which is apparently a thing that they name it in the film, apparently a thing that existed at the time in Italy. And marital status and things like that, and marital infidelity. The movie is about this, but doesn't have the foresight or the forgive me for using some like some trendy woke words here, but like the intersectionality to like step outside of its own persona.
Yeah, Abram mentioned that like the misogynistic elements of this film kind of, even if we view it as like, oh, it's a 60s film, I want to remind ourselves the number 4 film on our list right now, David Lean's Brief Encounter. That whole film is about adultery and is it moral? Is it love? Is it not? Like, and that one, as I recall, given that it's the number 4 film on our list, like, has an incredibly nuanced and complicated and like non-violent take on what this like real life situation means. That like obviously this is a sitcom film that is playing, it even, to me, I was even sitting there, I had recently watched some Seinfeld, right? Having just moved to New York, of course, I had just watched some Seinfeld. So
naturally.
like, I was watching them like,
They do like in the Clockwork Orange, they like pin you down and make you watch Seinfeld
when you
for
get in,
24
when you get into
hours
Grand
straight.
Central. I was like, yeah, I'm watching 3 episodes of a sitcom right now. And okay. And, sadly, the sitcoms didn't really evolve all that much on top of this, beyond what this film's humor is displaying. But I just want to note that like other filmmakers long before this film were able to put out things in the thematic realm that are like actually worth viewing nowadays.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that Abram asked the question of if this was a satire, and I think even he knew that was almost a rhetorical question. It's like, okay, well, what else would the movie be, frankly, if it wasn't a satire? I think for me, most clearly, in the editing and the music, that is where you're like, okay, this is a comedy related. It's got a very Jacques Tati kind of like wacky Monsieur Hulot kind of crazy energy. But the problem is that because this is a satire and it's satirizing the problems with sex lives and marriage of mid-century Italy, but that it doesn't have almost anything to say about these things. It feels like it entirely misses its mark. It's like, what is there to really talk about
that's why
with this movie? What is it actually criticizing? Yeah, okay, these things are ridiculous, but is there any? There's not any solution or any. There's nothing posed by this movie that makes me think about marriage or relationships or dating or these things in any different way than it already did. It doesn't seem like it offers any substance, anything narratively or thematically that would make it like and so I think this ends up being like one of the most confusing winners of the Palme d'Or for me. Like, what does this movie offer? Because it only has a few moments that I'm like, okay, you're doing something interesting cinematically, but otherwise it seems super stock standard, and then it just kind of fails its own purpose to my eyes.
I struggled to think of it as a satire until the third film. Like it, because the target is unclear, like to actually reference this stupid meme that is an incredibly good descriptor of what satire is and how it works well. The need for a target is paramount in satire, and we get that in the third one, right? We see we're like, oh, okay, these journalists, like the journalists are seeking this story and kind of maybe twisting the facts a little bit. And we get the judicial system, which, has via the backdoor channels, pun intended, and then justice there's the miscarriage of justice, right? There's kind of I don't know, the more I think about like all these terms for like screwing up the system, it's all really relating to this sex comedy stuff. But like that has a point if a week and okay, I guess like we don't, by the time we get to the end of the film and the guys like win the trial and get away with it, we're like, they really shouldn't. They really did a lot to cover this up. They really tried exercising all of their
that's like the only moment of actual satire.
Yeah, like everything before.
Oh, the legal system can be bought out.
Oh yes, 12.5 million whatever can buy it out. Yeah.
Lira, yeah.
Yeah, there's
Italy bucks.
Because I think what's frustrating to me about it, and I think Tanner, you were mentioning it, right? We're talking about these interpersonal dynamics, but it's coming from this intrinsically misogynistic viewpoint, wherein
and male viewpoint,
everything is it's all relational to the male lifestyle. It's the assault of this 15-year-old girl. The ramification is the social standing of the male characters. I think that there's a moment at the very end of the film that to me kind of really sours any potential comedic value of this, or even any real cutting progressive satire. when Ippolita goes to bribe the father of the 15-year-old
Right.
girl.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this.
He wants to get his justice, which is not the lira, it's to rape her, and he does.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gets back in the car with the men who are waiting for her to finish the bribery transaction, and there is this like awkwardness and this like coy look in her eye. She adjusts her hat, and like
Mm-hmm.
she has also been victimized, but through the prism of the narrative, it's just humorous that this has happened to her.
Yeah, I mean the characterization of her from the beginning is that she is, we are meant to believe, she is Jean Cito's wife. And at the beginning of the narrative, we're meant to believe that he is impotent and they haven't had sex in a number of years. And even before he wasn't having these issues, they weren't having sex because she is like a career woman, essentially. She is so obsessed with her business, dealing with the church and charity and things like that, that she doesn't have time to have sex with John Cito. What a crime, what a harpy she is for not giving it up to poor old John Cito. But then at the end, the joke is almost that like, well, this uppity business lady sure got her rocks off with this like poor peasant guy. Isn't that hilarious?
And the even crazier thing about that sequence is that it doesn't. The movie doesn't feel like it's leading up to that at all. Like
No.
There's this whole long sequence of them gathering together money to bribe him to not to like rescind what he said, under the auspices and the intent that they will then actually go to jail because they lied under oath or whatever.
They slandered him. Yeah.
She comes up to him and starts offering him money and like slowly doling it out. And I'm like, okay, what's really going on here? Like, she has what we come to know is 12 million lira in her little bag, and she's doing it slowly. I'm like, what is the purpose here? And the dad keeps repeating that that the biggest problem, no matter what amount of money they get, is that because his daughter has been sleeping around with a bunch of men, that she is, in the eyes of the Italian society, essentially useless because she won't be able to find a husband.
Right.
And the woman's not really saying too much about this. Like he just keeps repeating it, and like halfway through counting out the money, he just jumps on her, and I'm like, whoa. Like, I honestly thought that there was something kind of interesting there, narratively or socially, about the idea of the real damage to her life. Though I think from our perspective would be the fact that she's been sexually assaulted, or at least statutorily raped. Is that the?
I think that film.
She has experienced statutory rape from like 5 or 6 or 7 guys. That is what we would say is the real damage to her, and what kind of psychological damage and relationship damage will that have to her. But the movie and the culture of this time is more concerned with the fact that she won't be able to get a husband, and what impact will that have on her life and her place in society. I'm like, okay, that I'm actually finding that thematically interesting. But the movie totally undercuts that potential narrative beat where it is saying something about how young women can be challenged in society by these standards, because a big part of the movie is about the body count of the women that these men are sleeping with, oscillating between, of course, they want a woman who's super easy to get, but also they don't want her to have had a large amount of sexual partners. And then she's like, he's also a rapist. It's like, I thought we were doing something here.
The general perspective of this film is that all men are sex-crazed buffoons, and then it has to like shift its gaze towards, and then women, because these are the two groups that we are juxtaposing in this film, and it looks at women and it says, I don't really want to touch that one. I don't know. Can we just have sex with them and slap them around? Like, and that's the perspective of the movie. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to say anything intelligent past like, boy, men are dumbasses who want to bone everything, aren't they? And then there's these women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's who they want to bone.
Like,
and,
I appreciate.
I noticed
that
a lot of. Go ahead, Abram.
Well, I was just going to say that I appreciate to some extent that there's a degree of like interesting cultural obsolescence that's no longer really relevant for us to assess, but like this post-war moment in Italy and the presence of these military police and the sort of honor or lack thereof coming from the military. There's even some asides about this, about our main male character in the second narrative. If only he had gone to war. He wears part of a uniform at one point. Like there is this very of the moment analysis there, but I just think that it's obliterated by the film's complete lack of interest in, as you're saying, Tanner, and really interrogating the deeper, more fundamental interpersonal gender dynamics, and in favor of focusing more on this surface level and less rich material about the status of these men who have some sort of financial, social power in post-war Italy, because that's not even like, that's like a circumspect element of the satire even.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
because
hidden.
Like we're tackling. Yeah. Go ahead, Timo.
Well, the thing that I was noting, I guess, from about the middle of the movie onward was the control and like let's just use blunt words, like the bodily autonomy of the male and the female characters. And how often, I mean, particularly with the woman who takes her clothes off, how often these women are physically moved and grappled with, and the men just like, they literally grab them and they like literally move them around, beyond just like the like kind of relationship violence that the men inflict on the women. And then the film shows the women hitting them back a couple of times, which you're like, okay, great, we got a really good functional family going on here. But the ways that just like the men are entirely in control, that the women have really no control over their lives or what they're doing or who they see or any of that. And I think about that this time of the kind of sexual revolution and how we're in this time period where, at least in America, and I'm really speaking out of my ass here, I don't know how that comes to affect Italy in the time period that we are dealing with, like 66. So has the sexual revolution come yet? Has the like liberation for women, the ability to like understand that like sex is for pleasure also as, procreation? That kind of 60s post-war ideology is like, it's like nascent in this film. It shows up a little bit. But it's so completely covered up by the hierarchical male society that dominates and controls women the entire time. And so I wonder, like, these women act on their impulses like the men do. Do they, they have the adulterous streak that the men do? Are they, unhappy and wish their husband would shut up? It's like, the film is so insistent on only being told from one side of this dynamic that we, as you guys have said quite a bit,
still objectifies
just reduce
all the female characters.
Yeah, it just reduce them down to nothing. I mean, you just reduce them down to a plot point and a person that exists to be in the script, and not really a person that exists in the world, which I would argue the men really do exist in the world and like have relationships and go do, live the ideal Italian life, which is to like sit smoking and drinking in the plaza and make fun of your bro when they walk by. Like, isn't that the ideal Italian life?
And every so often you have to rush off because another guy's trying to have sex with your wife.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, gotta go,
I was thinking about, and it released the same year, which is a nice coincidence, but there's a Czech movie I really like from this year called Daisies, which is a lot more transgressive and also a lot more experimental, so it's not really an apples-to-apples comparison, but a really transgressive feminist film.
That might be the most experimental movie I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yes, it's really, really good, and it's on HBO Max, and it's short, so people should go watch it. It's very cool. But if we're thinking, to your point, Timo, if we're thinking broadly speaking in different cultures, in different artistic expressions across Europe, ideologies spreading across the States, etc., really looking at with a global lens on feminism from the period. It goes back to what you were saying before, Tanner, which I really like, which is I don't necessarily think you have to or even should give this film a pass for the way that it handles this sort of axiomatic misogynistic worldview when this time in filmmaking and culture more broadly was not, it was not tied to this idea of gender dynamics between men and women. And now, of course, we're looking at specifically an Italian film, but when you abstract it from that specific culture, which again, I know very little about, similar to Timo's point about how feminism was taking root at this time period, I just think if you put it in a wider conversation, it just feels extremely far behind much more interesting filmmaking from the same calendar year.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I mean, if we're talking same
I have a
calendar
question.
year, I mean, this, I was, go ahead, Timo, what's your question?
How does all of this affect the stuff that we're talking about, affect the comedy, affect the level of how funny you think this movie is?
I mean,
and particularly in like the
I think I
moment
can
to
speak for
moment.
most everyone here when I say I didn't find it especially funny.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah, I didn't
problem
find
is
it
that it just
especially
feels
funny.
rote.
Yeah.
I
it's
was
like,
hunting
I think
for bits that I thought were funny.
the dude putting in the earplugs is like, it's funny because it's so visual. It's such like slapstick level physical comedy. You're like, what do any character who's surrounded by a cacophonous event, and then let's say it's like not his wife, if maybe it's like a marching band or something going by, and then puts the earplugs in, and then we get to watch the serenity flow over his face. Like that is a comedic beat, but because it's his bitch wife, like I think it negates it. There's this kind of, at least within me, the post humor phase where it's like, oh haha, it is actually funny that he hates his bitch wife, because I've come so far in like, you're not supposed to say that, you're not supposed to like that, like, oh, it's kind of funny. But like the other parts of the film in which the bitch wife is doing something that the guy doesn't like aren't funny. Like it's not funny.
Yeah. The weird thing about the humor of this movie is that it also relies a lot on fast talking Italians.
Yes.
And one of my biggest
You could
issues.
just say Italians.
That's a good point. But specifically,
Those are
there are
just-
a number of characters whose personality point and the punchline of why they are maybe considered more comedic relief than others is that they talk a lot and they talk very
Yes.
fast. And so, especially in that first act, I felt like I had a headache because there was just so much happening and so many very similar characters yelling at one another and saying you slept with this person and yada yada yada, and like the camera's like swinging around, and they're talking so fast about things that I don't really understand, and when I do, I don't think that there's much depth there, that it was really just like being thumped on the head for 30 minutes. I had, there was very little value in that first part, specifically because they were talking so fast, like in a language I don't understand, and also sometimes about business dealings and Italian culture of the mid 20th century that I'm not familiar with. That to me was the very good example of how culturally specific humor can be. And we talk about this in a number of movies and how do things age, but comedy is something that I think can age better than some other things. But in this particular context, there was so much happening and so much information being thrown at me that I felt like I needed to be a totally different person to be able to receive that at the pace that would allow me to understand why it is funny, rather than just being simply overwhelmed by the amount of things that are happening on screen that the characters are saying.
Yeah, I know exactly what you. I mean, this really all circles around. I was trying to find which character it was. I believe it's Soligo. The actor's name is Quinto Parmigiani. But he's like the ball breaker guy, the guy that they introduced at the beginning. They're like, oh, nobody likes this guy because he'll just talk your ear off about anything and everything.
Guy. Who they like elaborate plans
honestly,
to get him out of the party.
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, one of the funniest moments of the movie is when they all like see that it's him and they keep driving. Like, shit, it's him. Oh shit, it's him.
I think there are honestly some good bits with this guy, especially when like the doctor has to ride with him and they're like driving his shitty little car down the streets and there's like drunk bikers or whatever. Like those are some solid bits, but again, that's me. Like I was like, okay, this is a comedy. What are things that I find funny? And I was like, what's supposed to be funny? And I suppose I find it amusing at best to see like some drunk biker like on the side of the road. But I don't know, like it was kind of like Tucker mentioned, it was kind of funny to see them like try to avoid this guy. Like when the owner of the house that they're having the party at in the first act, he sees him and he's like, I'm going to bed, I'm out of here. Like there's some amusing things there, I suppose.
I think the two laughs the movie gets out of me is one when the guy jumps off the roof to kill himself after his wife says, please come home.
Yeah.
I think that's funny, but I also just think it's funny when people try to kill themselves when in a comedic context.
In a comedic context.
Not in Minecraft, not in the real world. It's a hot...
In 1950s Italy.
Go listen to the Logic song. There's a number you can call.
That's right.
But then there's another moment in the third act when I think it's when they find out the age of the girl and they like crash zoom on a bunch of faces.
Yes, these are pretty good. When
that's
they're
pretty
like
good.
on the phone with each other. Yeah.
And then the scene that
Well, the
follows
best part
that, in
about
which
that is the chain going in reverse, where they're
yes, exactly, where the detective is asking her, is that the guy? And she's like, yep, that's the guy. And then the guy sees this happening and he's like, oh, fuck.
The funniest part about that sequence to me is when the first guy realizes it, and instead of being like, oh shit, I'm gonna like go to jail, or like, you know, I've just like really broken maybe my moral code because I don't want to sleep with someone who's underage. And again, this is very much played for satire. The chain going in reverse of, you motherfucker, you didn't tell me she was underage. Did you know she was underage, you idiot? And then that guy just goes and blames the guy who told him and told him and told him. And so it's like, okay, all right. That sequence I actually found quite entertaining because it showed the level of they don't care attitude that they have of like, instead of like the gravity of the situation, they're just finding someone else to blame because they don't want to believe that it was their failing that led to them sleeping with an underage person. It was, my friend didn't tell me she was underage and therefore it's his problem. But then the chain just keeps going.
I would have done it if she was 18. Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is what's understood.
I think what's weird about all this is, again, I was mentioning it earlier, but the one moment where it feels like the satire really is working well is when we are in the newsroom of I think it's called The Independent, and we have there we go. We have the reporter dictating to the stenographer, sort of, you know, this is my article, and it keeps changing in real time as the reporter is getting different phone calls about the ever-evolving state of the case, and juxtaposing this against what we know to be the bribery that results in the poor, and I don't even really there's like class dynamics here, but who really gives a fuck? It's barely in the movie.
Yeah,
we have these when we finally end up having these upper class men get off free, and the lower class father and daughter being put on trial for slander. We get a nice note of this paper that is sort of continuing to bloviate about its moral compass and its sense of justice. Ends up having this puff piece about how indeed in the end justice was in fact served. And then there's this pretty on the nose discussion with the commander, they call him, the head of the news organization, about the importance of exaggeration.
Yes, better to exaggerate than not say enough, which is, you know, pretty overtly. Hang on, I gotta find the director's name here. Pietro Germi, just being like, that's what the movie is. Hey, but thanks for coming, everybody.
And I think and it's, to me, it's frustrating that like this is the better satirical material, because really the satire is supposed to be, or is trying to be for most of the runtime, about these more innate gender dynamics. It's not really interested. It's interested in the culture by half. It's interested in sort of this post-war military Italy by half, but like the role of like media is not something that the film is concerned with outside of like 7 discrete minutes of the runtime across 2 scenes. So
Yeah.
I just find it to be strange, and I also just feel like the whole thesis there about exaggeration. I'm watching this, I'm like, no man, actually it's all the shit that you say implicitly that makes the film fall apart. The exaggeration, whatever, but as I'm watching it, it's like there's an intrinsically rotten foundation in these dynamics you're portraying. So the movie is just simply a miss for me. I don't really know what else to say about it.
Yeah. I had one question left for you, gentlemen. I had one question left.
Fire away.
What is the birds and the bees? Like, I understand culturally the concept that it is.
Tanner, let's send you to your parents for that one.
You gotta ask your father.
No, but literally, my question is: can anyone literally explain to me what the metaphor is that parents are supposed to tell their children?
Is that they?
No, I can't.
Birds and bees.
Because my dad
procreate.
refused to talk like that. He's like,
Is
we're
that
gonna
it?
use the real adult words.
Cock.
Cock and vagina.
No, but I mean, I think it's just that they have a
Is
lot of
that it?
babies. Yeah.
Hey, I'll say it. That's pretty stupid.
You know, what my dad said is he said cooter.
Oh, did he? Oh, I see.
Oh, wise and refined.
Pud.
Yeah. Well,
No, I didn't. Tanner, I think the birds and the bees, it just means men and women. I mean, I've spent many an hour
Which
looking
one's
through
which?
binoculars trying to see the birds and bees fucking, but it's never happened in my experience.
that's my thing. Is it like so? Are men the bees? But like birds and bees don't have sex. So what is the metaphor?
I think the men are the bees and the
Right,
women
'cause
are
they
the
have stingers.
birds.
And if you have sex with someone, your dick falls off and you die.
Exactly.
That's why I've never had sex.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And if you have sex, then the woman lays a giant egg, as far as I know.
I mean, none of us can really tell. We're so afraid of our dicks falling off and we're gonna die.
Yeah.
I want to die. I don't want to die.
Oh well, yeah. This is all me because I wanted to say shout out the tagline. I guess specifically for the English version of the English release of this film, which is the tagline of the poster is "Everyone does it, but the birds, the bees, and the Italians are famous for it."
But here's the other
That,
thing.
Birds
that
famous for having
tagline is
sex?
too long, man. That tagline is too long.
Yeah.
Also, the rabbits
It should
are
be
much...
in space. No one can hear you scream or whatever. That should be.
Rabbits are much more famous for fucking than birds or bees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the other
Oh,
thing.
sorry. I messed it up. This is the actual tagline.
Oh.
Everybody does it, but nobody is famous for it except the birds, the bees,
That's
and the
better.
Italians.
That's better. That's better.
Yeah, it is
better.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the
No, you got
French...
the point across.
The other
Yeah.
thing is the French are fucking more than the Italians also, famously.
And they're more
I mean, like,
romantic
it's the
about
city
it
of romance. Yeah.
too. Like what was the one that we
I don't know.
watched?
Genghis Khan is really the most famous.
I suppose he
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
So and he was what from
Mongolia, right?
Mongolia?
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't go to Mongolia and eat a
Where-
wombat. You'll get the Black Plague.
The birds, the bees, and a specific Mongolian. It's not as compelling of a movie
Doesn't roll off the tongue
concept.
as well.
No, I disagree.
Oh, okay.
I think an ancient Mongolian sex comedy is much more interesting than whatever the hell we just watched.
Good point.
I
Good
think
point.
I can see it. I can see it. You guys want to give this one a score?
Yeah, but Timo, to your point, were you going to shout out a man and a woman?
I was, exactly.
Well,
movie.
funnily enough, Timo, that film also won the Palme
Okay,
d'Or
there's something in the water.
1966.
Something
Yes,
in the
it was
water.
that.
Aphrodisiac love
shared
potions, more
Palme
like.
d'Or. Yes. But yeah, I'll because that we've already discussed that film, it won the same year. I'll quickly go over the Palme details here a moment. Of course, as I already mentioned, if you watched that episode, you'll remember that, of course, Sophia Loren was the jury president this year. Notable members of the jury that voted for these two films to win. I only wrote down one name. Richard Lester of the UK was a member of the jury. There were 23 other films in competition this year that did not win. Notable inclusions were Alfie, the original Alfie, I believe.
Oh, I
starring,
hate that movie. That's another sex comedy. What the heck was
Yeah?
going on this year?
I don't know.
I despise that movie.
Orson Welles' Chimes at Midnight. David Lean's Dr. Zhivago.
Oh, that one actually
Oh,
is
it's another
John-
sex comedy.
Yeah.
Dr. Zhivago actually is good. Oh,
And John Frankenheimer's Seconds.
okay.
Yeah, that's got Rock Hudson in it.
Yeah, but we went back for seconds on the year 1966, didn't we, gentlemen?
Whoa.
True
Do
indeed.
you think they did it because it sounds like sexy sex? Was that what was in the water?
You know, that's the best
Wow.
theory we've heard so far.
Okie dokie.
Let's find out what we give it. Punch your numbers in, and in 3, 2, 1, go! Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's way down there. We don't even got to move it. 3.2 is the score. I didn't have to move it from its spot. It ended up at the
That's
last
amazing.
place. Last place. The point breakdown is
Wowie zowie.
I was the most harsh. I gave it a 2.5. Tucker gave it a 2.8. Abram gave it a 3.4. And Tanner gave it a 4.0. So, yeah.
He just loved it.
Tanner's
I
over the
loved
moon.
the movie.
I couldn't get enough.
4 out of 10 on that one. Yeah, I really couldn't stand to give it much more than a quarter. I was like, I think this film can get a quarter, and it's like that's
A
about
quarter
it.
its way.
So yeah,
boy.
Tanner, will you warm up your pipes for me?
Me. Yes, I think I've sufficiently warmed up my pipes. Shall we, Timo? Shall we?
Yeah, you just start singing, and I'll click it.
Wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital or is it on real? Wheel, what's your deal?
The number is, you'll just have to take my word for it, 23.
Oh, number 23. Oh my God. All right, gentlemen. Okay, now, I didn't say that because this is an especially recognizable movie, but we're only winding back the clock 1 year here. And I hope you haven't had your fill of sex comedies just yet, because this is from the year 1965, directed by previously aforementioned Richard Lester, who was on the jury in 1966. This is a film starring Michael Crawford, Donald Donnelly, Ray Brooks, and Rita Tushingham. Hello.
Whoa.
This is a film from the UK called The Knack and How to Get It.
This
All right,
is okay.
That's a pretty fun name.
Yeah. Will it be any different?
The Knack, he's a PlayStation character. Go to the store, you can get him there.
I knew someone was gonna make the joke. How many knack jokes? How many? Of course, the Venn diagram for people that will understand jokes about the video game Knack and the people that are looking up the Knack and How to Get It Palme d'Or winner is they're on the opposite sides of the planet.
So looks like
Jesus
an
Christ.
interesting film.
I love video game adaptations.
Yeah. Wait, here, you want me to read the plot description here, gents?
Yes, please.
Okay. A nebbish schoolteacher begs his smooth (parentheses) and misogynistic pal to teach him the knack, how to score with women. Serendipitously, the men meet up with a new girl in town, as well as a friendly lunatic who can't help but paint things white. What?
What?
Is that a joke about cum?
Wait, what? Wait, huh?
There's got to be a cum joke, right?
I guess so.
Did they have-
No. I
Did-
can't help but paintings white.
Did they have cum in 1965?
I don't know if they had invented it. I don't know if they had invented it yet. Anyway, this film is a breezy 85 minutes long, and it's on the Amazon Prime streaming service for your viewing pleasure.
I'll tell you something.
Amazing.
I'm gonna put this in our planning channel here. This poster looks like a movie that would be available for free on Amazon Prime Video.
Oh yeah,
No,
look at
because
that.
that's the Amazon Prime Video poster.
Yeah.
That's obviously not the 1960s poster of the movie.
It's the DVD
Tucker, you mean
release.
they didn't cut out some JPEGs of them and put them on the Union Jack?
Look, here's a DVD. Here's a DVD copy of it.
God, look at those guys' eyes.
Wow.
Look at her
Insane.
eyes. Look at his eyes. All three of their eyes are terrifying.
It's only $28.50 for the
Wowie
the Knack and How to
zowie,
Get
what a
DVD.
steal.
So
I
I would.
can't wait to learn how to paint things white.
Yeah, I would say that it can only go up from here, but that's not true. The Knack and How to Get It could be worse than The Birds, the Bees, and the Italians. We're just gonna have to watch it and find out. And you, dear viewer, are gonna have to stick around here on the channel and keep watching our videos until this next one about the knack comes out.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Y'all got anything else you want to throw in the ring before I close this one out?
No.
No.
Did we discuss that there is a new Palme d'Or winner? Did we discuss that? Have we recorded since then?
Maybe
right?
a little bit. Give him a shout out again. It won't hurt.
Anyway, the newest Palme d'Or winner is, of course, it was Just an Accident, which is a film from Jafar
But what's the film
Panahi.
called?
Oh, Abram, that is the name of the film. It's from Jafar Panahi. Neon picked it up out of the most recent Cannes Film Festival, so it'll release in the U.S. sometime this fall. And rest assured, we will be talking about it.
We will be talking about it because what nation does the director come from?
Well, Jafar Panahi is from Iran, but
A
the
bit
film
estranged.
is of. He's from an estranged filmmaker. I believe it is a French/Iranian production, meaning that it was filmed in Iran, but I think largely funded by, and I think it will be, if it gets nominated for like Best International Feature or whatever, it'll be the nominee from France. So,
Okay.
there you have it.
Okay. Well, good. They want to avoid nominating an Iranian picture for Best International Film. Tensions are high and things are not good in that realm right now, so
Right,
I'll leave it at
yes.
that. Abram can't handle.
Yep.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yep.
Yep.
Tensions are high.
I've said too much. If I speak any more, I'll be in trouble. We got to get out of here. Thank you all for talking about the birds, the bees, and the Italians. We'll be back in the future. Not sure if it's going to be in a week or in more than that. We'll see.
And stress your outro this time, Timo.
Yeah. Stay cool. Keep warm. World fucking peace, man.